Hello, everyone. Today, Matt is reading. We are talking about Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. So I'm kind of on a Sanderson kick. This channel is going to be on a Sanderson kick. This was my first short Brandon Sanderson book. I've read the back end of Wheel of Time, which was written by Brandon Sanderson. Each of those were over 1,000 pages. Mistborn Era one, I think each of those were around 700, 600 to 700 pages. And this is a standalone at the moment, and we'll get into that later, book by Brandon Sanderson. It wasn't incredibly short. I don't know if Brandon Sanderson writes many things that are incredibly short, but the story was pretty tied up from end to end. I know watching some other YouTubers, reading some Reddit pages about Warbreaker, some people were a little disappointed with how the book ended. It wasn't Sanderson's typical ending. You know, people call it the Sanderlanche. It wasn't your typical Sanderlanche, but what I thought it was a great ending to the first book that really set the stage for a potential book in the future. Sanderson is yet to come out and say that there is a confirmed book, but he has said that he would like to revisit the world, and I'm very excited for him to do that. So I think the thing that I liked the most about it was, I'm reading Stormlight Archives now, and book one, The Way of Kings, leaves a ton of open questions about the magic system. This one it introduces the characters, builds up the magic system, and you see the magic system play out all in a single book, which I really liked. It's kind of been a nice breath of fresh air from going from the Stormlight Archives into a book like this that kind of told a single story within one. I mean, the idea of people's hair changing colors were thrown right into it. It was a good book, kind of the polar opposite of Way of Kings in some ways, because by the end of the Way of Kings, you still have so many questions, as I did, so many questions about what are the Spren? What even is happening in this world? I hear about Odium, but what is this? Who are the heralds? There's so many questions. This one has a lot more answers, and I kind of like that. It was a nice breath of fresh air to read. So I want to get into a couple of the characters that I liked. I've kind of got them grouped in pairs, and then for the mercenaries, I've grouped them together as one. But first, Ciri and Soosborn, I loved their story. It was a little love story, and Sanderson, I feel like maybe it's just I'm not incredibly a romantic, so this book kind of hit exactly what I would want out of it. It was a nice little love story, but also part of that love story drives the mystery of who is Soosborn, who is this god king, this lord ruler over the Haladrim people. And you have the Haladrins up north, you have the Idrians down south. Not an incredibly big world, but big enough that you're able to tell it in one story, which again, I did like. So, some seemingly small things like Soosborn, he didn't have a tongue. Nobody would have thought that. He couldn't actually speak. Everybody throughout the book, especially the Idrian people, viewed him as this evil god, but really he had a childlike innocence to him. And that caused Ciri, who is coming into her own, to also fall for him because of that childlike innocence, where she started off very afraid of him. Some of those scenes where she's on her, she's prone in his room, kind of like waiting for him to take advantage of her. He never does, because he doesn't even know like what lovemaking is. It's kind of funny to read looking back at it. It was very tense chapters. And then once you know that like, oh, he's like a child, it's kind of funny. I don't know. I thought it was funny to kind of go back on those scenes and think about him. So it was very short progression into their romance. It wasn't this long drawn out thing. All of a sudden they kind of fell for her. But in a short book, I thought it was told fine. It made sense to me why they did like each other. She was the first person who really kind of came into his world to try to get to know him. And then it's a little more difficult, I guess, for her, but she used to be afraid of him and then now sees him as this childlike innocence, and then she kind of fell for that in him. So I like those two characters. I want to definitely see more of them. If another Warbreaker book comes out, I expect them to kind of be the king and the queen, because she was this ambassador queen from the Idrian people, and he's obviously the king of the Haladrim people. So I can imagine a world where they are together, a united kingdom against some dark force that's trying to overthrow that whole planet, I guess. So I enjoyed it. Really want to see more from them. Other people I liked, some of the gods. And some of the gods were, how do I say it? Not meaningless, but really they were just small characters to pull the plot forward. The ones that it really focuses on was Lightsong and Blushweaver. And again, these are two characters that while they didn't have a romance together, you can tell when Blushweaver dies at the end that Lightsong really did care about her. Even though she was the god of lust, probably incapable of loving dearly, she also cared for Lightsong as well. So the one thing that's really cool about Lightsong is he's described as this god a god who doesn't even believe his own religion. So he's a god who doesn't even take himself that seriously as a god, and that's what makes him a really good character. He's funny, he is filled with humor, but again, he just doesn't take himself seriously. All the other gods, they really took themselves seriously as their god figures. And none of them, I think, realized that, well, I didn't really do anything. There's nothing I did to deserve this godship other than I was labeled as returned. Lightsong, I think, realizes that. He's like, why am I worshipped as a god? I haven't done anything. All that I do is just have a bunch of breaths, which is another cool part of the magic system. Really want to hear that be expanded on. I did think Blushweaver was a little much at times, overbearing in her godship, but she was a god. She was big on who she was as a god, and she really fit into the role of what that would have been. So as the god of beauty and lust, she had a lot of beauty and lust in the book. The next characters that I really like, Vivenna and Vasher. I thought it was the best character arc from Vivenna. She had highs and lows, some of the highest highs and some of the lowest lows, but it felt so natural to be on that journey with her. I felt like as the reader, I was going on that journey with her. Anything that she was led into from the mercenaries, I fell right into it with her. When she hit rock bottom, I fell right to rock bottom with her. I trusted everyone she trusted. I didn't trust who she didn't trust. And I don't know, I kind of maybe just fell right into who Sanderson was writing to whenever it came to Vivenna. And I really liked her character arc because of that. I rode some highs and some lows in the book while reading her character. And Vasher, we meet him first in the prologue as this really tough dude. And that was kind of consistent through the whole book. He doesn't really let anyone in. We don't really even know at the end who he is. We get some ideas of who he might be, but at the end, they kind of just walk away, like literally off into the sunset. It felt like a country western movie where they're just riding off into the sunset, but it didn't feel completed. It felt like there's more to come from them, especially from Vasher, who seems to have this knowledge of the world, how it used to be, and even in some ways was the cause of the fall of that world. But we don't really know exactly what the fall of that world was. So very interested to hear more from them in a future book. I'm hoping Sanderson gets back into this world. I want to see their characters really fleshed out. Vivenna, she was descended, and so was Ciri. They're descended from the Returned, but we don't know exactly who, how, or when that happened. And I think that could be something that could be written about more in the future. And then next, we have the mercenaries, the gang of three, Denth, Tonk-Fa, and Jules. Really enjoyed these characters. They were great. They were playing off of each other the whole time. Jules plays this really tough mercenary character. Denth plays this really witty character, as well as Tonk-Fa. They had me totally fooled as the people who were ultimately trying to bring about the war. I had no idea. Like I said earlier, I fell into it just like Vivenna did. So Denth in particular, he kind of reminded me of Kelsier, a similar type of character. Obviously, Kelsier was a good character. Denth was a bad character, but kind of the same type of influence that Kelsier had on Vin, Denth was able to have on Vivenna, which I thought was really cool. And I want to talk briefly about the religion and magic system. Like I said, it was all-encompassing into a single book. I got enough out of it that I felt like it finished the book for me. But there's so much that we don't know. The Returned, I want to see more about who those people are. Who are the Returned? Why are they returned? It doesn't really make sense to me, and I know Brandon Sanderson is famous for writing the whole Cosmere. So I'm trying to even think about who these people might be in light of what the Cosmere, other books have said about the Cosmere itself. And I still can't draw the conclusions of who these returned are. If I told you that the magic system, like going into this book, and I've had people, like my wife was saying, oh, what's this book about? I was like, well, it's a magic system based off of these returned people. They die and then come back in these godlike forms. They're resurrected as gods. They hold breaths. The magic system's rooted in breaths and colors. You would be questioning of how that all gets put together. But it does. It's one of my favorite magic systems that I want to see fleshed out even more. I think it's a great beginning to what could be a really cool fleshed out magic system. And Sanderson always does a good job of this with how he deals with the different religions in the fantasy worlds that he builds. You have the very pious Idrians who their leaders are very corrupt, and then you have the Haladrim people who they kind of worship these returned people, and they do it in very, very flashy ways, but it's kind of an authentic way that they're doing it. It's very strange. They're worshiping the gods of colors, they're dressing like their gods, and they're very authentic about it. It's not Ardents, because I think that's in Stormlight Archives, but their priests, basically, you kind of expect them to be the people who are causing this war to happen, but really it was the Khanpal people, so the third people, the Idrians, Haladrim, and then Khanpal way down south, that were ultimately, they had infiltrated the priesthood of the Haladrim people and were trying to cause this war between the two nations to destroy themselves so that the Khanpal people could rise up as the most powerful, which was very cool. Did not expect the Khanpal people to be behind it. They're kind of like always a side thought, which makes me think through as I'm reading other books by Sanderson. Is this a common theme that he likes to do in his stories? I think it is. I'm not going to spoil any other books I'm reading right now, but I can definitely see how Sanderson likes building into that trope. So my ending thoughts. I really want another one of these books. I really liked it. I think that it could be a trilogy. It could just be a 2-book series where he kind of builds the world, and then you kind of get either a backstory of who Vasher is or a continuation of the story. I think either or. If he wrote a book that was kind of the, it's book 2, so it's always meant to be read as the second book, but it's the war that had happened that led to the world that they're in now. So wouldn't be something that you would want to read before you read Warbreaker, because it would totally ruin Warbreaker for you, but it's kind of meant to be a book that goes back maybe 100, 150 years and talks about, I think that in the book it was like maybe 300 or 400 years. I don't remember exactly, but it kind of goes through what happened that brought the world to where it is now. I would really enjoy that book, even if he didn't come out with a continuation of the story. If he could go back, build on the magic system, I feel like that would be a great book to read as well. 2 books, that's all I'm looking for. Just one more, Sanderson, one more Warbreaker book. So my favorite quote is, "It's all about drawing attention," she realized, and this is Vivenna speaking. "It's all about drawing attention. The whites and the faded colors are a reaction against the bright colors because everyone tries so hard to look distinctive that nobody does." So she's talking about the Haladrim people. She's trying to blend into the Haladrim people while she's kind of snooping around, seeing where Ciri is. And she realized, if I just come in plain white clothes, while that seems bland to me, it'll actually stand out to the Haladrim people, who they try to outdo one another in the amount of color that they wear and the lifestyle that they live. I don't know. Felt like it was very deep, because it was maybe reflective of our own world, where we try to do all these crazy things to stand out, where really if we take a step back, live modest lifestyles, that actually stands out in a world where, modesty of lifestyle and of yourself isn't really something that is popular. So being more, maybe even modest isn't the right word, but being more true to yourself and not trying to wear all these flashy colors to fit in is actually going to cause you to to stand out more. Thought it was very cool. Anyway, this is the Warbreaker book. This is also my new studio office downstairs, so I'm excited to be filming a lot more down here, and we will catch you on the next one. This is Matt is Reading, and you can follow me on Peloton at Matt is Sweaty. We'll see you next time.